with the prep that we did together, I started on January 2nd, so I waited after January 1st.
Yeah.
With the little January 2nd started. But I will tell you.
What happened on January 1st, Brian?
Yeah. But I will say when I first start, it's actually like really exciting again, because now I'm cleaning up my diet. I eat pretty much non-processed food. You know, as I think about it, it's very simple ingredients like rice, chicken, eggs, you know, very one word kind of ingredients, right? And then I start losing weight and I feel really, really good. It's kind of like in the first few months, it's actually it's amazing how good you do feel, because suddenly like a little bit of the weight on your gut starts to go away and you're breathing a little bit better, you're sleeping a little bit better and all that. But then obviously it gets a little harder as you once you get down to closer to the show. But what would you say through this prep went really well, and what could have been improved, or how would you say classify that? Because I think I dialed in at the show. I don't think I could have gotten any better as far as...
No, I think... Yeah. So I think a lot of the judges would agree you were the leanest guy up there, and I think we peaked incredibly well. Like you're I mean, I still get comments from people talking about they want your paper-thin skin that you had.
Yeah.
The things we did well, we had an advantage. It had been about, at that point, 9 years since we had worked together.
Yeah.
So we already kind of knew each other, you know,
Right.
and expectations. But I had changed some things in the last 9 years. But in terms of what we did well, I actually liked that you were prepared for a longer process.
Yeah.
So, you know, we dieted for about, 8 months for this show, and that sounds really long to people, but it wasn't all down all the time.
Right.
We had interspersed periods of growing.
Right.
So sometimes I would say people get really antsy when they hear 8 months, but it's not all down. And so for someone like you, where we need every ounce of size that we can get, this is advantageous, because rather than looking depleted by the time you get to stage, we are significantly fuller because you haven't been dieting for 8 months and we haven't been crash dieting you. We had slow, steady periods of weight loss, and then we would have growth periods in here, and then more slow, steady weight loss. So we'd preserved and built every bit that we earned. So I loved that we did that. I think that's what went really well. I also think our timing was really good in terms of when we put in those periods. I think your food choices were good. I would like to see more fruits and vegetables in there.
Yeah.
Such an underrated component of bodybuilding, in my opinion, because bodybuilders are known for avoiding processed foods, which is a great thing, right? It's great to avoid processed foods because a lot of processed foods shows they can have like some negative hormonal impacts. Which is what we don't want. But then I think a lot of bodybuilding foods are what I would call like a net neutral, like rice. It's unprocessed, but it's also kind of devoid of nutrients besides the macronutrients.
Sugar, right?
Yeah, it has carbs and trace amounts of proteins and fats. And it's kind of the same thing with chicken. Chicken a little bit more net neutral. I mean, there's some. There's some minerals in there and things like that, but mostly protein and trace fats. I would like to see more fruits and vegetables, because I would kind of call them like net positive in terms of not only do they have micronutrients, but they also have loads of phytochemicals. A lot of research shows that a lot of these phytochemicals can help with recovery, and overall they do a lot of things that we are still learning what they do and the positive impacts of them. So if we get more things like that, and I always tell my clients I want to see a variety of colors and types. So a lot of times when I tell my bodybuilders to add vegetables in, they're like, okay, I had broccoli with 2 of my meals.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I eat broccoli every day for 9 months. I'm like, no, I'd like to see like red peppers and carrots and different colors and types. I want to see cantaloupe and strawberries and blackberries. All of these things have pronounced effects on weight loss and health. Blueberries and blackberries for sure.
Yeah.
And so like I would like to see more of those placed in your diet.
Yeah.
In terms of what we can do better with training, I think we actually made a lot of progress with our training in that short amount of time. Like your legs came up quite a bit from the last time you had competed.
Right.
And I think going through these exercises changes that we're talking about with different ranges of motion, different cueing, and different setup of the exercise would be helpful. And then it just becomes a matter of doing more of those things for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding is a sport of not just extreme effort, but extreme patience. And so like a lot of times I think people, even when they're doing the right things, they just need more time to let those positive things accumulate results.
Gotcha. Well, one thing with the program that you gave me now for like weightlifting, I am writing down every single lift and every single rep range, because I am going about this as either I try to add a little bit more weight or I try to add an extra rep or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as long as I'm constantly progressing, I feel good. And it actually is very beneficial, because when I go in there, instead of trying to figure out what weight I need, I know, okay, last time I got to this number and I did this much, so it makes it actually more efficient when I'm actually doing my exercising, because I know about where to warm up and about where to get to my working sets. And then, okay, last time I got to here, this time I need to get to 6.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I find that those notes can be helpful too, because also in the spot that you're in where you are trying to target specific areas, just using a row for an example, I actually went through the same thing that you did, where when I competed in 2013, lower lats were a big weakness of mine. And I spent 3 years before my next show developing that area. Yeah. And I would even make notes where I would do a row and I would make a note, I got 15 reps on this exercise with this weight, and I would even say, I would note that I was starting to lose tension on the target area. The weight was just on the brink of being too heavy for me to keep tension in that lower lat area. So what I would do is I would mark that in my notebook, and then the next time I did the exercise, I wouldn't even try to go up in weight or reps. I would try to keep the weight the same, keep the reps the same, but feel it more in that area. So sometimes there's even an advantage to keeping the weight the same, keeping the reps the same, and then just trying to feel it more in that target area. Because I always tell people, remember, the body can't distinguish how much weight is on the bar. It can only distinguish how much tension is on the muscle. Yeah. So if you can provide more tension to the target area with the same weight, that's progressive overload right there. Progressive overload doesn't always mean more weight on the bar, it just means more tension on the muscle.
I go through there and I write down every exercise, every rep range and all that. So how do you feel about it? Is that, would you say that everyone should be doing something like that, or is it am I just being way too analytical?
No. One thing that is interesting in my time with coaching people over the course of my career, well, first off, everyone's at different stages, right? You know, some people, I do coach some first-time competitors all the way up to like world champion level. So one thing that's interesting though about those that progress is, from a coaching standpoint, I'm not like living with my clients. So I take care of what I call like the macro approach to things. What are our macronutrients? What's our timeline like? What's our sets and reps? Things like that. But I'm not living their life with them. So things like ideal meal timing, I can't control. You know what I mean? I don't know if they're working a job. I don't know what their schedule's like with work. I don't know when they have to pick their kids up. So I don't know what foods bloat them. I don't know what foods they feel great on, what foods they like the taste of. These are the types of little things, and in terms of like what you feel like, I'm not in your body in the gym, so I don't know when you start to lose tension on that target muscle. Right. So these little things in learning what works best for you, the individual, are kind of what take people from, intermediate level, or even not even intermediate, but like high level to elite level. Because these are the types of things that you need to know about yourself. And, sometimes I've heard people say, well, you're the coach, you should know these things. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way in every sport, right? I always view, these are like in-game situations. Bodybuilding is different. The in-game situation is when you're in the gym. You're in a game. Bodybuilding happens every day. You have a game every day. And it's like, Steve Kerr can't always tell Steph Curry when to shoot the ball in a game. He draws up the plays, he gives him sound principles and guides him on decision making. But at the end of the day, Steph Curry has to decide when he's going to shoot the ball.
Right.
And that's kind of what I do with you and my other clients is I draw up the plays, I guide you on your principles. And, so if sometimes Steph Curry takes a bad shot, his coach pulls him aside and says, maybe next time we would want to pass in that situation. And if if we see that in the process of training, you're performing the set within a form that's maybe less than ideal, or I can see that you're losing tension when you send me a video, maybe we should lighten up the weight in the next session. So I kind of guide your decision-making skills so that then your decision-making gets better and better over the course of time. But the bulk of that work needs to be done by the bodybuilder themselves, because nobody's going to know better than the one who's in their body.
Right. Well, sometimes it's funny because like I know about when my show is, and just say like if I'm 6 months out from a show and I'm doing legs, I know that I might only be doing how many 26 maybe workouts or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've got only 26 times to make those legs bigger. So when I'm in there at that gym on that day, I'm going to make sure I get the most out of it, because if I'm going to grow those legs, I only got 26 times to do it.
Yeah, right. And that's such a nuanced thing too. So even that brings up a nuanced thing of like gauging one's own recovery.
Yeah.
Because I find that everybody has one of two default settings.
Yeah.
Meaning that someone's default setting is probably, one option is a little bit more of a slower gas pedal.
Yeah.
They tend to not push until they have to.
Yeah.
And then you have the other person with the other setting is a high motor setting where it doesn't matter if I feel like garbage that day, I'm going to push all the way to the max, in which neither one on the extreme end. I mean, I'll take someone that pushes too hard over someone that doesn't push hard enough any day of the week.
Yeah.
But neither one in the most extreme setting is optimal.
Right.
It's like being able to like learn the nuance of, and one of my clients always asks me this. He's like, I feel really run down today, and I'm beat up, and he's like, if I back off a little bit, is this just me being a baby? And I'm like, no, this is like part of learning to gauge like when is appropriate to push.
Right.
I mean, and it's like, that's, in my opinion, that's the beauty of the nuance of the sport. In race car driving, right? The guy who wins in any race is not the guy that just puts his foot on the gas and leaves it there the entire time. You know what I mean? It's like learning when to give it gas and when to back it off is such an important skill, and it's such a hard skill to develop, because like you said, you're like, I've got 26 workouts. Which ones of these do I really go all out? Which ones do I back off a little bit?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is when I talk about that skill. That's not the type of skill that you learn even in like 1 or 2 years. This is like a lifelong, constant monitoring, 15-year career type of skill that takes time to hone.